Hello, family ministry community. It is time for what I assume is your all's favorite part of each month, a live training. And today we are talking about training parents. This is a very important part of what you as a ministry leader need to be doing, no matter what position you hold, where you serve. We need to be equipping parents to be the disciple makers that God commanded. So today we're going to talk about the why of that and then get into some really practical stuff with the how to do that. So while we're waiting for everybody to log in, we're waiting for Dr. Mulvihill himself to join us. Why don't you guys pop in the chat? What have you all done in terms of family training, maybe this year, maybe last year, maybe it's an ever? And then if you have any specific parent training questions, go ahead and pop those in the chat as well. All right. Whoop. Went away. Okay, he's adding. It's always so tricky to add someone on here, but it's adding Josh, I think. There we go. He is here. Welcome.
It's always the dance getting on Facebook Live, man.
I swear, like every other month they change things. They just like to keep me anxiously guessing on what's going to happen.
True.
But it's okay. We got it. Okay, so Josh, while we wait to get started, where our friends are logging on, we're talking about parent training today. So I'm going to ask, what is the last parent training, anything that your church has done?
Boy, we just did one for homeschool parents. Actually, my wife, and the reason I know that we did this, it was in April. So we had about 400 show up specifically for homeschooling, and we talked about parenting with the end in mind. It's kind of a fun way to think of it, and a lot of other things. So it was good.
I love it. So I take an unconventional approach to parent training because I'm not on staff at church. I'm a volunteer trying to kind of move the pastors in the direction that needs to happen. So we are training in the times that we already have. So I'll share another one later, but one that they just did. So super small church. You got to keep that in mind. And for a while, there was no children's ministry. There was no Sunday school for kids. So there was Sunday school classes for adults, but none for kids. And this is when I dragged my feet because I enjoyed for the first time as an adult not having to be at church for like 18 hours. And God moved me out of the season and I just ignored him as long as I could until he's finally like, you're done, Amber. So I started up children's Sunday school. But then what do we do with these parents? Because we had like our 70-year-old class. And then we had which was really like 80s and 90s. And then we had our 60-year-old class. So anyone could have joined those, but what about all these young parents? So we had to launch a parent-ish. It's not just parents, but it's that age group, right? So those 20s to 40s. And then we had there's a lady in her 50s, maybe closer to 60, who's raising a child. It's her great niece that she has custody of because mom died. Like, it's crazy. So they started a Sunday school class for that group, and they ended up doing that. We picked a parenting resource. We're like, we have you, let's do it. So they just finished that. It was gospel-shaped parenting. I have not read all the way through it. It's on my list to go through. New Growth Press did it. I'm loving all the things I see at a New Growth Press. My husband really liked it. And then they're taking a break. I think they're doing a book of the Bible. And then later this summer, they wanted to do one on marriage. So kind of on their own, without me being there and leading and being like, hey, you need to equip your family. It's happening, which is exciting. So they're using the Sunday school hour as a parent training time.
Good way to do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys are watching in, pop in the chats for us. Tell us, what have you done as the last parent training at your church? Maybe it wasn't you, just your church in general. And then if you have any specific questions to parent training, pop them in there too, because I'm watching the chat while we go. But we're going to dig right in because, I mean, we got a lot to say. Josh is a talker. I'm not. I'm very quiet, reserved. But he's a talker. Okay, so a lot of the people that are watching this live or watching the replay, they're children's ministers. We have just kind of seen across the board the people leading, majority, not all, but the majority of the people leading the conversation tends to be children's ministry leaders. And this whole family ministry concept really looks a lot like children's ministry, doing it hopefully well, all those good solid curriculum, and we're teaching, we're discipling kids. We're not wasting time on games and snacks, because I'm anti-snacks. But we're doing children's ministry well. And then we're resourcing parents. And we're sending home stuff that they can use. Maybe we're sending home a great book that they read, or a podcast recommendation, a family devotion, like the family cookbook devotional. We're doing those things. We're resourcing the home so that they can lead. And we're calling that's family ministry. We've equipped the family. So we've missed the mark. And I think really just across the board, this training aspect that is so pivotal to equipping parents is what gets left out. So with that in mind, Dr. Mulvihill, why do we need to train parents?
Well, I'll mention 4 reasons. We'll move fast. First, probably the most obvious is family discipleship is God's good design. And I think most of us would say, yes, I believe that. Or at least on the surface, I believe that. But I'm going to just ask you right now, do you truly, to the core, do you believe that? And you think of the families in your church. I feel like sometimes we might actually question that. And by that, I mean, there's families in our church that we look at and we think they will never disciple their children. Therefore, I'm going to have to fill the gap. Like, we don't want to have to fill the gap, but we truly look at some of the parents and think, yeah, I don't know, seems unlikely, won't happen, or mega long shot. The reality is God has given the discipleship of children, the raising of a child, to parents, not pastors. We know that's the case, but I think sometimes we kind of, we don't fully believe that. So I'm going to call you to truly believe God's word. Recognizing discipleship is too important to outsource to others as parents, and truly as grandparents. I've been a pastor for about 20 years. I tried to get it done for about 10, doing the best I could without, teaching core doctrines, teaching expositionally through books. I mean, super meaty stuff. And without parents engaged, it's just it's an uphill battle. So anything we can do to help parents and grandparents capture a biblical vision for their role is going to be a win. Number 2, family ministry is strategic. And so as valuable as it is to invest, from us to a child or youth, it is a significantly greater impact when we equip parents to disciple their children. We have a friend, maybe you guys are familiar with this person. His name's Rob Reno. He leads a ministry called Visionary Family Ministries, and he states this. He says, if you spend an hour with children, they get 1 hour of ministry. Certainly valuable still. Then he goes on to say, if you spend an hour training and equipping parents, your hour multiplies itself into hundreds of hours of ministry in the home. Like, that's like common sense stuff, but of course it's really true. And if this is money, we're talking return on investment. For those of us that have invested in certain things, we hope our money grows. It's the same kind of reality with discipleship. Return on investment from family discipleship is it's very significant. The best way to disciple a child is to disciple that child's parents. And we've not always thought that way in the church. In fact, I was a pastor at a church, and I remember kind of learning the whole family discipleship, family ministry stuff as this was a long time ago now. So I was kind of learning this. I wasn't trained in Bible college. The family piece really was non-existent when I went through my, I was trained as a youth pastor in my undergrad, and the family piece really wasn't even hardly there. So I kind of learned this as a pastor. And I remember talking to my senior pastor about this, and he literally said this to me. He said, Josh, we hired you to work with students, not their parents. And I remember I'd been at that church for almost a decade, and one of the things I didn't do a good job with this pastor, the senior pastor, was helping him understand the why of equipping parents and how we truly get a better outcome with our children. And what I had to help this senior pastor understand was and move him from working with students, not their parents, to working with parents is working with students and children. It, of course, just does that in a different way and creates, in my view, and I think scripturally, a far better outcome than what would happen otherwise. Third reason, family ministry helps children develop a lifelong faith in Jesus Christ. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So there's been a lot of studies done on who is the greatest influence in a child's life. And you could probably think of a lot of different kind of individuals, from parents, of course, but also teachers and pastors and peers, and even screens and media and all those kinds of things. And sometimes, I think we convince ourselves these other influences are the primary key influences in a child's life. And I think they can be if the family has created a void that allows them to be. But when the family has the preeminent presence in a child's life, those other influences are still large, but they're not primary. So let me share one of these studies with you. There was a study done by a gentleman named Christian Smith, who did a lot of research on with young people. If you've ever heard of the term moralistic therapeutic deism, it's a mouthful. Christian Smith was the one that came up with that. But he asked this question and did some research around it. What's the number one reason teens keep their faith as adults? I read that in a Huffington Post article where they published this, and my antenna went up like, wow, I want to know what's the driving factor, like what's the number one reason. Like, that's a big one. Let me read you, I'll just read you exactly what this article said. This is word for word from this. It says, the holy grail for helping youth remain religiously active as young adults has been at home all along, according to the findings of a landmark study of youth and religion by sociologist Christian Smith. And it goes on to say, mothers and fathers who practice what they preach and preach what they practice are far and away the major influence related to adolescents keeping their faith into their 20s. These next numbers shocked me. So just 1% of teens 15 to 17 raised by parents who attached little importance to their faith were highly religious in their mid to late 20s. So those are the kind of parents that we're often trying to fill the gap for and kind of like pick up the pieces. And it's, of course, all of us that have been in the situation know it's really hard to do that. Can it happen? Yes, it can. But it's way better if we help parents kind of get their stuff together than, and here's the numbers that Christian Smith shared. He said, in contrast, 82%, man, this is huge numbers, 82% of children raised by parents who talked about faith at home, attached great importance to their belief, and were active in their congregations, were themselves religiously active as young adults. Every parent can do what I just described from that. Talk about faith at home, attach great importance to their beliefs, and active in their congregations, like doable by literally every single parent. And did you catch the numbers that he just shared there? 82% of children. Now, of course, that's not like a guarantee, but we've all heard of dropout statistics and the depressing numbers of like 60 to 80% of children will walk away from their faith. Well, this is the exact opposite. Literally, like 80% of children will continue walking in their faith with parents that are just literally walking and talking, there's an authentic, essentially, I'll summarize, there's an authentic faith there in their life and in their home, and their kids see that. And I think that's really attractive. So it literally helps children develop a lifelong faith in Jesus Christ. So if we want that for kids, the best way, even like research shows, the best way to get towards that is through mom and dad. And then the last one, that's kind of the positive side. The negative side is our families are just under attack in the world that we live in. And we know that as the family goes, so goes our church, so goes our communities, and so goes our children. And so strong fathers specifically, but of course strong parents in general, lead to strong families, which then lead to strong churches. And so this is no secret. Individuals that have wanted to completely change society have learned that the way to do that is to destroy the foundational institution of the family. So just let me read you one example. This is from, you've all heard of Karl Marx, I'm sure, with Marxism. He talked about the importance of abolishing the family in his communistic manifesto. So this is from 1958. Feels long ago, but there are 45 goals essentially to take over a country. And here's one of those 45 goals. He writes, discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity, and easy divorce. And so this is how the family gets destroyed. And we see this, of course, in our society today. The world that we live in uses sexual perversion, gender confusion, personal gratification. These are kind of the levers. And of course, there's all kinds of delivery systems. But there's definitely a war going on against the family. And so as we build into people's marriages, we build into parents and grandparents, if their world is falling apart on that side of things, the family discipleship just is not going to be occurring. So as we strengthen families, we nurture a godly home where discipleship can occur, rather than trying to kind of pick up the pieces from families that fall apart. So anything that we can do on those levels becomes really, really valuable. So there you go. There's 4 reasons, Amber. And for those listening, if you guys were, if you're thinking, I don't know if this is valuable, it is, I would say put it at the top of the list valuable, because it is absolutely critical for the evangelism and discipleship of children.
And I think we do our families a disservice when we don't do any training, because we're assuming they know their calling. We're assuming they know how to fulfill their calling. My husband is just a great sounding board, because I have literally grown up doing children's ministry. I was that kid helper who, as soon as I was not a kid, I was a kid helper, moved all the way, 15 serving in children's ministry. So kids are literally my life. So of course, you know how to pray with your kid. Of course, you know how to lead a devotion. And my husband, who did not grow up in the church and is not kid geared, he's like, Amber, you're kid geared. You know how to do this. Some parents don't. And so he's given me a lot of those like aha moments. Some parents don't. Some parents might not know how to pray on their own because they're brand new Christians. And we have to make sure that we're training them on what their calling is, how to fulfill their calling, and then a million other different things that we can, because we want to strengthen them, equip them so that they can disciple. We're going to talk some more practical, some tips on training, but we had a great question that came in. How do we get parents engaged for these trainings? So let's say we're offering a big once a year, 1 day parenting class, and there's food involved. I'm Baptist, so there has to be food. So right there, number 1 is you need to feed them. If there's no food, you have decreased your likelihood of people showing up. So there's food. So Josh, what would you think, a couple of quick things? How could we get families encouraged? Because I dealt with my last church. It was lukewarm families. How do we encourage families to want to come to this super important training that they need and is going to help them fulfill their command as disciple maker better?
One of the things I learned is build it into the already existing structure of your church if possible, versus a a separate created standalone event, you're going to get higher attendance guaranteed. So I don't know what what is the discipleship structure of your church? Is it small group focused? Is it Sunday morning class focused? Is it both? Or is there, do you have existing a podcast that your church does, or other things like that they're already happening? You don't have to create the event specifically for it. I found my best ones were building it just into those structures. So if that's possible, that's great. If you're going to do a standalone thing, short, and when people are already there, and with parenting, it's helpful to have classrooms open. So I tried all kinds of times to do parent training. My most successful was during Sunday morning when our children's ministry classrooms had a place for their kids. And so I would just do it for 1 hour. And if I did a standalone thing, it would be 1 hour for 1 week. Or if I did a short series, it'd be like, maybe 3 weeks, but then it was done. Very specific on what I was giving parents. The other time that works really well is after the service on Sunday. So, corporate worship's over, provide lunch for people, and then they're already there, and you can do something for an hour or so, and then everybody goes home. They don't feel like they had to carve out a whole evening or a whole day. Once in a while, I would do like a half-day thing or a full-day conference, but as the in-person asked, those are always, they're high, they're a lot of work, and they require a ton of promotion. And there's a time and a place for those. I think they're really valuable, and I would build them into our rhythms. But they, those weren't the meat and potatoes that we relied on all the time. So my rhythm on a yearly basis, here's how I did it. I would game for 4 equipping events a year, 1 per quarter, and I would try to build them into the current structure for 3 of those 4. So I would do a small group in the fall, a small group in the winter, and I literally would just pick a book, a parenting book, a topic that I thought our congregation needed, and we would share that with the other small groups that were going out. And I asked a trustworthy couple that I thought, they're doing good in this area as parents, would you lead this? I would meet with them, but I didn't even lead it myself, and it wasn't one more thing on my plate. I would do a parenting thing during Sunday morning, doing one of those, maybe 2 of those quarters during the year. And then we always try to build some into the pulpit, depending on what the teaching series is or what we're going through. And that's your best bang for your buck. If you can get it into the pulpit, you're getting your whole congregation. Nobody has to come out for extra. And there are built-in times every year to do this on parenting. You got Mother's Day, you got Father's Day. Many churches do child dedications, and I would go up we do 3 rounds of child dedications at our church every year. That's more than most, but we have anywhere between like, we've got a large church, we got a lot of couples, but so I would go up on stage and I would talk for 3 to 5 minutes. I'd give the really condensed, parenting seminar essentially in just a couple minutes. It's less than a TED Talk kind of deal, and that built it in. Our entire congregation would hear that. And then there's a time and a place for a full day conference. We just did one, and we have found that the more focused we become, the better the result and turnout is. So we just did a parenting deal, and it was specifically only for homeschoolers, and then we shared it all around in the Minneapolis kind of homeschool groups. And we had a good number turn out, about 400. And it was parenting specifically in the homeschool arena, different challenges we'll do the same thing for parents of public school kids. They have different challenges and needs. That doesn't have to be broken down like that, but that's one of the ways that it's worked well for our church. And so, So how your church does that is, I think there's a lot of different ways it can happen. I found that was sustainable for me running, I've got the weekly programs and all the other stuff going on, and I can sustain that kind of thing from a year to year basis. And, it would be about this time of the year where I'd sit down and look at my calendar for the whole rest of the school year and be like, okay, what am I going to do in the fall time for an equipping opportunity? Small group, bam, done. Pick the topic. Okay, what am I going to do in the winter? What am I going to do this spring? And what am I going to do this summer? Boom, boom, boom. Plan it out for the year. Good to go from a training standpoint. And I was able to sustain that for nearly a decade and kind of raise the level of equipping families at our church.
So I will echo it needs to start from the pulpit, because if you come in and there's no church mention of why we need to train parents, and then you're like, here's this one day event, come to it, you're going to have low attendance. And with that, if you're the only person on staff or volunteer, whatever, paid, not paid, if you're the only one talking about, mom and dad, it's your role to disciple your kids, here's how, you won't get as great of support. Been there, done that, call me. Not every church is full of staff who is understanding of that or supportive of that or willing to minister that way. We would love to talk to those. So we love the Family Ministry Academy, because your whole church staff can take it. Leaders, volunteers, deacons, elders, whomever wants to take it, the whole church can take it together and get this understanding of what family ministry is. But the most success that you're going to see is when it starts kind of from up on high, from the leader of your church, your pastor, and then trickling down through all the staff and leaders. Not within your control, I get that, but there you go. We can recommend some books such as Family Ministry by Dr. Josh Mulvihill. It would be a great gift to give your pastor. Okay, we're going to go into some practical. We've kind of quickly given you the why. I'm going to assume that you guys probably get the why because you're watching this training video, so you understand that it is mom and dad's command to disciple their children first. It is not the job of the church. It is the job of parents. We are to equip the church, which includes teaching the kids and the students, but then also equipping mom and dad to lead. Josh gave you some solid stuff that you can take back to your church and be like, yes. So now let's go into that practical of, okay, you've told us that we need to train parents. Now what? So the first tip that I'm going to give you sounds really simple, but you need to figure out the when and the how for your families, because you could have the best plan in the world, and if it isn't a good fit for your families, it's a waste of time, energy, resources, which all goes back to relationship. Now, obviously, my church setting, whole lot different than Josh's church setting. I could drive to all of my parents' house in the same afternoon, and Josh would be doing it for 4 years. We get that, which goes back to, you got to know your families. So if you are having a training piece, when is it going to work for your families? Are all of them on third shift? Then maybe Sunday school is not a good fit because they're not going to be there. Are you dealing with single moms? So you have to have it at a time when there is childcare. Are you dealing with parents who work every other weekend, so they're not at church? Do you have parents who really, they cannot make an in-person thing, but they will absolutely watch whatever video you send them? Get to know your families. How are they going to consume the training that you are going to be providing for them? With this, finding out kind of where they are. If you have a ton of parents who are brand new Christians and don't feel comfortable leading their child in prayer or even know how to navigate their Bible, that might be the starting place that you need to start, versus if you have seasoned parents, maybe you've already done the general, it is your job to disciple your kids. So maybe you're moving on to some of those training topics like technology or navigating the preteen and puberty, lots of different training options. So get to know your families and then make a plan, because there's only so much you can do. Whether this is your full-time job, you are bivocational, you are volunteer, whether you are in the thick of raising kids or you're a empty nester, you can only do so much. So what are you putting on your calendar and what you can do? What does your church calendar look like? Is it already so full of events and programs and meeting time that if adding something else in is just going to make minds blow? You have to think through all these things. Likely, you probably need to remove things from your calendar, use those existing times, but when is the best existing time that you have with the majority of families? So your job for today, job one, is to sit and do some thinking. Go get a lovely beverage, warm, cold, whatever your preference. Think through, when are my families at church? When could be a win that they're already here that we could add a training piece on? How often can you do it through the year? Do you want to start small and just do one? Do you want to do quarterly, like Josh said? You got to make a plan, be intentional with training your parents, or best plans, best hopes and dreams, nothing ends up happening. So that's one. Think of your when and your how. Josh, what would be some topics that would be really great topics? So get your pens ready to write, friends.
Here are, I'll give you 8. And yes, get your pens. If you do 1 a quarter, this is 2 years worth. If you do, 3 a year, this is a 3-year cycle. These are going to be, you're going to find these are kind of core ones that your families come back to again and again. Number 1, start with the biblical role and goal of parenting. We assume parents have clarity about this, and a small percentage do, many do not. So if you were to say to a parent, what's your biblical role? Can you summarize that for me in a sentence or a word? Most are going to struggle. And what's your biblical goal? What are you trying to accomplish as a parent? Again, we think most parents know this, but many don't. Even if a parent says, well, my role is to disciple my children, raise them in the instruction of the Lord, maybe they'll quote a passage. But what does it mean? Like, does a parent actually know what it means to disciple their children? I find many don't know what that looks like on a daily basis. So a single session, if you can summarize that, give clarity scripturally to a family, is going to be a huge blessing. You can't implement ambiguity, and a lot of parents have that, or they've adopted our world's ideas of what a parent is supposed to do. Simply happy, healthy, successful children with a little bit of Jesus thrown in. We got to get clarity there. Second topic that you could cover is discipline. This is the most requested topic for help that I get from young parents, preschool, toddler aged, and a lot of parents, their kids are running their home, and they need some help with, what does godly authority look like? What are some biblical discipline methods? There's a lot of bad stuff in the Christian arena on discipline. There's a lot of behaviorism. A lot of therapeutic stuff has come in. So be really careful in this one, what you give families. Make sure it's really solid biblically. I love Ted Tripp's book, Shepherding a Child's Heart. That one really looks at some kind of the heart side. It doesn't get as broad as I'd like to see on some of the discipline methodology, but I think it's really solid as a foundation. Number 3 is sexuality. Our kids are getting discipled by 1,000 rainbow flags every single day. They need to know what this looks like scripturally. We can't wait on this subject anymore with kids because the world's having that conversation with them. Fourth one would be gender. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? I remember I was walking out of Barnes & Noble with my 4th born child. This was a year or 2 ago now. He's almost 13 now, but when he was about 10, we were walking out of Barnes & Noble, and we were going through the checkout while we walked out, and John said to me, "Dad, who's Harry Styles, and why is he wearing a dress?" And so these kind of gender conversations about what it means to be a man. Of course, transgenderism is huge right now. Parents need some guidance on how do we have these conversations with our kids in a productive way. Nothing is new under the sun, and so as challenging as some of these topics feel, they're not new, and we just have to add some context to our current culture. Number 5 is technology. Your families, and I'm dealing with this. We got 5 kids. Technology feels like it's suffocating us sometimes. And how do we navigate that well as a family, and giving, especially family, we're all experiencing technology for our oldest child for the first time, trying to figure out, when does a child get a phone? How much time should they get on a screen? What should we do with video games and music, and what kind of movies should we watch? And just having that conversation with parents to help them create what is, there's some scriptural principles that we can apply, but a lot of it's some house rule kind of stuff that parents just need clarity and help to have with their home. Family worship is a 6th one. Help your families lead devotions, get saturated in God's word. Show them how to do that. Many didn't grow up doing that, so just having an example for them to see is like, oh, that's great. I got a model now. I can do that. Corporate worship, this is a huge value of mine. I think you see it scripturally, and I think the family ministry programs we're running as a church is corporate worship. We want the family to worship together. Second hour, they come into children's ministry, youth ministry, and then at home, we want family worship. Those are our 2 programs. So teach your parents how to do that. How do we help kids come into the corporate worship setting, and how do we train for them for that? There's a book called Parenting in the Pew that's helpful towards this end. And then 8 is biblical worldview. How do we help children develop a biblical worldview? Those 8 are kind of core foundational ones that you could build a number of years of training around them. And most of those, there's already really great stuff out there on all of those topics. So you could literally find a book, a resource on each one of those to help teach that or guide that or build a study around, and off you go. Amber, talk to us about a family training events.
Yes. Okay, so this is how I have been training these parents. I walked into, it's actually the church I grew up in, church that I was called into the ministry at, which is really cool. And now I'm back volunteering for it. But I didn't feel like I could come in and be like, listen to me, parents. So I've taken this approach, which was also a complete shift in how I did children's ministry. Except for VBS, I no longer do any kid-only events. And I did them for years. I have like 20 years of egg hunts and fall festivals and all the things. And I'd started at the last part of my last church, but now I'm just no, we're only doing family events. And the family events are multi-purpose for so many reasons. So I'm just going to share how I trained families this past weekend in our event. I found myself teaching 3 classes. I had kids taking over for teens and this parent class, because the other teachers, husband and wife, doing a separate class, they were going on vacation. And I'm like, that's a lot. Like, we don't have subs that I can call in. What do we do? So I came up with the idea of doing a pancake breakfast, because Baptist, there's got to be food. Well, this event is called Family Time Sticky Faith, because if you've ever met children in pancake syrup, it's sticky. But I wanted this to be not just a get together and eat, not just a filler because, oh, I got multiple classes, what do I do? I wanted this to be a really intentional time, training parents on how to make their faith stick. The Shema, the as you go, while you walk along the road, while you sit at home, all of those things that we are living out our faith. Well, do most parents, have they actually shared their testimony with their kids? Chances are no, because unless you're geared that way, it kind of feels weird to bring up these topics, to just sit down after dinner and be like, would you guys like to hear about when I met Jesus, when I changed my life? Like, who does that, right? Me, because I'm weird. And I tell lots of Miss Amber stories. But I wanted to walk parents along to give them some things that they could, 1, do it for the first time maybe, but then 2, do at home. So while they're eating their delicious pancakes, which are so easy to make, so this is a low prep event. My mom ended up coming over and like frying the second batch of pancakes. We're small, but again, get a couple ladies, make some pancakes, boom, easy. So they're eating their pancakes, and on the screen, well, before we started the questions, I based this off of Psalm 145, where one generation is declaring to the next God's mighty deeds. And I'm talking to parents. I'm putting in this training piece before we start. They're eating because, attentive listeners. But I'm telling them, hey, parents, it is your job to pass along your faith. So the why of it is being told. The command to parents, this is your responsibility. And then we move into the practical of now here's how you do this. By living out your faith, that is one way that you're passing on. And we talked about like intentional discipleship, where we're sitting at home and we're reading God's word, versus that unintentional discipleship where we're just living it out while we go. So then we went through a series of questions. I popped them up on the screen. I told them out loud, like, okay, the next question you guys are going to talk about as a family is, how did you become a Christian? How have you heard God speak to you ever? So different questions, and the kids got to engage as well, because no kid wants to be talked at for an hour. So they got to answer. My daughter, of course, cried. She's like, I don't know the answers. I've never heard God talk to me. She was fine. Favorite story from the Bible, all these things where you're just talking about your faith together. So then we wrapped it up with the question of, how do you want to grow in your faith in the next year? And this one was really cool because my sister-in-law with 4 kids, including like the baby at an event, was like really self-reflecting on this. And she told my mom later, she's like, I want to know more scripture, like, scripture and can bring it up. And I'm not at that place, and I want to get at that place. So like, man, power of this super simple event. And then because if I'm training parents, I want to send them forth to be able to go and do it. So in true themish way, I made little recipe cards for them, and they got a little stand for the recipe card, and it's all cute. And it's different verses about God's power, his mightiness, his amazingness. So then hey, parents, get in God's word together, read scripture together as a family, because we're commanded to do this. It's your job, and talk about God's mighty acts, just like Psalm 145:4 says. So I have done several events that are family events that I'm training the parents. And it has for those parents who are a little unsure of their role, the ones who want to do it but don't know that they're doing it right or don't know how to do it, they get to do it in a very safe place, because the leader is there walking them through how to do this. So maybe during your event that you're doing, a family event, they are leading the devotion time in their group, but you're there to say how it's done. Here's what you guys do. Okay, go do it. You're there if they need to call help. So then when you send them home, they're like, okay, I just did this. I can do this. So I love, love, love using events to train and equip parents. It's also really fun. You're getting church fellowship, all of that. So many different ideas. I did a prayer theme one with Candy. I did a Lego one. That one was super awesome. So many different ideas. We made Holy Week stones one year where they're making their resource for Holy Week to get in the words together. Lots of ideas. Yeah, Kim, you're doing VBS's family style. Love it. So many options to do events. And this is a great take the place of a service that you have. I know, Patty, you said that you've got people in different Sunday school classes. Well, maybe this is a time where you kind of cancel the other classes and you can do this, like something like this, church-wide. And good news for you guys, all the prep work has been done for you. Head over to store.renewination. I always forget if it's shop or store. Okay, go to church.renewination.org. Go to our online store, and you can get the Sticky Time Family Faith event. You need to buy pancake syrup and mix, and boom, you're done. Okay, Josh, you got any other great ideas? Maybe, I don't know, there's like a book or something that would be really good that parents need.
Yeah, but part of the reason I wrote this book is for what we're talking about today, 50 Things. It helps parents create a discipleship plan, their own customized one, and then put it into action. So a lot of churches use that for child dedications, training young families. But if you're looking for a really practical, like nuts and bolts, how to do discipleship, Deuteronomy 6, that's about as good as you're going to find. We also offer something called the Biblical Parenting Seminar Kit. So if you would like a parenting conference kind of in a box, essentially, with everything, work, workbook, facilitated guide for you with all the teaching notes, PowerPoints that are all customizable. You can update them. Literally, it's like it could be a full day conference if you wanted it, or it could be a 6-week kind of small group or teaching series you go through. We have that. So at certain times that's really helpful, I think, as a church to kind of get something, once in a while, as I said earlier, that one-time standalone thing is helpful. So we have that as well in our store that you can go and purchase, and you can get everything you need in order to do that really well. And I see Amber just linked it there. All right, close us up, Amber. We went a little over, but I think it's worth it today.
But it was good stuff. I mean, you guys got 8 topics from Josh. Like, I hope you're writing it down. I was if you weren't, so we got you. We have to train our parents. This is not something that we can just hope for the best. I tell you, as someone who made the mistake of for a decade of my last church having too gentle of a training approach. I tell you this from someone who has regrets over 10 years of ministry, that I wasn't training them firmly enough. I wasn't doing hardcore the things that I needed to do to get a fire lit under them to where they are discipling their kids. You have to take training your parents very seriously, whether you have the role of director of family ministries, family minister, whatever your title may or may not be. Figure out how your church is training families this year. So a couple of ideas for you, just kind of a quick brainstorm challenge. Put one training event on your calendar this year. What does that look like? Maybe it's a book club if you got a bunch of readers. Maybe you're going to use a Sunday school single class. Maybe you're going to do a 6-week small group. Maybe you're going to have a parent meeting that you already have on the calendar every year and it's well attended, and you're going to take 5 minutes out of that and do an intentional training. Maybe you're going to do a full 1-day seminar like Josh talked about with the Biblical Parenting Seminar Kit. Maybe you have parents who are hungry for this, and so you're going to go all out and you're going to contact Josh or myself, and you're going to bring in a speaker and have like a full awesome training. What are you going to do to make sure that the parents in your ministry understand their biblical command to be the disciple maker and are equipped to fulfill that role? If you have questions, we would love to talk to you guys. If this is kind of new to you, man, you need to sign up for the Family Ministry Academy. If you have a great idea of what has worked, please share about it in the group. We are all about sharing. So give us links, drop in pictures. If you had something that you thought was an amazing idea and it absolutely flopped, share about it. And maybe someone has a great idea or is going to get brilliant idea from that. Talk about it, because we are all kingdom workers together, and we want to see this next generation of kids being raised by parents who are passionate about discipleship. So your challenge this week, how are you training the parents in your ministry? All right, Josh, it was long, but it was good. I think it was worth it.
Worth it.
All right, friends, go forth, figure out how you're training and let us know, because I like to know what you guys are doing.